Welcome to Creating Miah this week. As always, I'm joined by Miah Axton.
Yeah, my accent.
See, I don't even know how to say that last name.
I don't know. Maybe we'll talk about creating me a new last name at some point in time.
This is a podcast, as we discussed last week, about transitioning from Jeremiah to Miah. And it's a weekly podcast where we sit down and I ask questions about Jeremiah's transition to Miah. And this week we're going to continue our overview a little bit, and we're going to talk about what does transition mean to you, or to really anyone. Why don't you give us a definition of transition?
That's somewhat difficult. It can mean a million different things to a million different people. But mainly, what it is a transition is that you are going from living as your assigned gender to living as your preferred gender, or what gender you actually are. So that could include anything from surgeries, hormones, therapy, the way you dress, the way you act, talk, and it covers everything. Just imagine everything that you do that's, gender specific, or that you do that you think is only being assigned to one gender or the other, and then flip it on its head.
Give us an overview of the trans community. I just get the sense from talking to you and others in the past that there's a broad spectrum. It's not just male to female, female to male. It's just a wide variety it's a potpourri of gender-based anarchy.
Well, yeah, you've got the male to female, female to male is basically, that's transsexual. That's you're moving from one gender to the next. That's transsexualism. Transgender, on the other hand, is exactly what you said. It's a little bit of everything. There's specific terms people branch out on. There's intersex, there's bigender, there's genderqueer, there's all kinds of stuff. But the transgender label basically applies to anyone that's outside the normal boundaries of gender.
Transsexual and transgender are not the same thing. It's like transgender is the overarching, marketing is the overarching word for PR, for advertising, it's sort of the overarching term.
Yes and no. Outside the community, yes. Inside the community, not so much. There's a groups and some transsexuals that do not want to be called transgender, and they don't always want to be called trans anything for a while, because they're transsexual, but once they either hit their final surgery or their final point, they are a man or a woman at the end of their line. They don't want to be called trans anything. They want to be called man or woman. That's kind of an iffy, touchy subject, but for the most of us, transgender fits just fine. And then there's the sub-labels below that.
Walk us through some of the terms. I'm guessing transvestite is not a good term.
That's technically an offensive term now, and that mainly applied to, cross-dressers, in any sense of the word. There's a whole cross-dressing community out there, and it's not how most people see it. It's not just a bunch of, hairy old men getting their willies off dressing up in women's clothing. There's a lot more to it, and I don't know a whole lot about it, because it's pretty big in and of itself. So that's kind of its own little thing. Like I said, there's intersex, that usually deals with people that are born intersex, hermaphrodites almost, but, a little bit different. There's some people out there that are fully 100% male, but very androgynous. Say like the models that have been kind of popular lately they model both male and female clothing perfectly, and you can't really tell the difference one way or the other, and they're perfectly straight, and they consider themselves male or whatever, but that's that. And then you've got bigender, which means you have gender fluidity, which means you kind of float back and forth in between masculine and feminine. There's people that are naturally like that. There's people that are like that through fashion, but there's some people that are literally bigender, where they float back and forth. And a lot of people kind of see that, especially when they're early in transition, is that you don't pass easy. So you kind of float back and forth, or you don't have the ability to always present in your, preferred gender. So you do float back and forth. Then there's genderqueer, which is just an absolute gaggle. I don't know. They just decided to create a new term, but it's just an absolute blurring of having in any kind of, line in the gender sand.
So what are the offensive terms? What are you not supposed to say? What are some of the ones that just are out of bounds, that are hurtful, that are very mean, that are hateful, that I can call you later?
Well, basically it's ever been used in porn. it's offensive. I mean, you got she-male, you got tranny. Labeling things by TSTG or TV is no longer transvestite TV, TG, transgender, TS, transsexual, which is always just a shorthand way of, defining porn.
The words are not offensive, but the acronym is.
Well, no, it's just using them to label something or someone is offensive. And then you've got trap. Some people think trap's offensive because that's been popularized by 4chan and somewhat pornographic type material. So it's, hot mess is supposedly an offensive term. You don't want to call somebody a she-male or a tranny because most people think of porn or something offensive in the first place in their own mind when they say that. So it's not necessarily that you shouldn't use it, but think about what you're saying in context.
When you think of tranny, you think of like the movies, you think of the Birdcage or something where it's sort of like a caricature. Hot mess was one that I had never heard of before, and I just said, oh, that's just a hot mess one day. And it was after you had come out, and one of our coworkers shut the door, and he's like, you can't say that anymore. That's deeply offensive. And I'm like, hot mess is offensive? What the f*** are you talking about? And apparently it was, I guess, so I used it more around you. That's just me.
Yeah, our relationship is highly offensive. I feel sorry for any newcomers. I had someone on Facebook message me and just now added me as a friend because they want to watch us have spats on Facebook. And I'm sitting there telling this guy, I'm like, you wouldn't do this if you ever saw us do this in person because we are quite possibly the meanest people on the face of the planet to each other in the nicest way possible.
Yeah, that was probably, if you know what campaign we're talking about, it was, there are times where we have to remember we're in public, and we go, all right, listen, we're fighting because it's fun for us. So what are some of the other things that we ought to know, besides just terms and labels and names? What should people know about the trans community?
It's a different community from what I've seen from like the gay and lesbian and bisexual community, is that they're not so stringent on things. I mean, we're questioning everything in our lives and gender roles and stereotypes and everything else. So there's not a solid block of people saying, hey, this is the way it is. It's black and white, this and that, gay or straight. It's not like the gay and lesbian community you hear a lot more about. So it's basically the number one thing to know is ask questions and realize that you're asking somebody questions on a personal level about personal things. So apply the same standards you'd use to talk to anybody. You're not going to ask people like, oh, hey, what kind of surgeries have you had? Right. That's kind of invasive.
Hey, man, nice to meet you. How's your dick?
Yeah, pretty much. And a lot of people do that. They think it's not offensive to do that just because they're trans people. And it's like, no, they're human beings first, and you don't ask random people like, oh, so what kind of pills are you taking? Or, how long have you been in your current situation? And it's like, you don't do that.
Like you have cancer. You're like, how long have you been in this unfortunate situation? So, how's your dick?
It's wonderful. It's just, just be respectful. Don't be a dick. Just don't. And it's not necessarily, to me, it's not offensive. I think it's perfectly okay to ask somebody if they are trans. That's kind of borderline, but I think that's perfectly acceptable because you need to be able to open dialogue and have more dialogue about the trans experience and everybody else. Because if someone's asking about that, they obviously either already somewhat know you or maybe want to know you more. So you should take this opportunity on both sides of it to talk about the whole trans experience and the person and what's okay and what's not. And that's the best way to do education. And that's the way we do it with the Libertarian Party and everything else is just talk about it. Ask questions. I mean, we do it with a lot of other things in our lives. Why can't we do it, respectfully and, civilly like with this?
So how's your vagina?
I don't have one.
It seems to me that the trans community and the LGBT, the T is the redheaded stepchild. Is that perception correct? Is there tension between the communities?
Yeah, both sides. Is one that there's been some instances, and I can't list specifics, obviously, but you can Google this, I suppose, or if you've been involved in the community, you know that there's been a couple bills or a couple, laws that were going to be passed or changed, but that T wanted to be thrown in there too, and that's the reason, the lawmakers used to not pass the bill, is because of transgender stuff. For some odd reason, it's the weirdest, freakiest thing ever, but there is a tension, and I've seen it, I've heard about it. Like I know, our mutual friend, he's very involved in the LGBT community and has been for a long time, and he's even, not compared to the public, but compared to people in the community, he's decently ignorant on it too. And that's I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but he's highly involved. I mean, a huge activist, and there's a lot of things he's been wrong on, doesn't know, and so there is a split. And then you get to lesbians.
How do you feel about lesbians? Are you in favor of lesbians, or?
I love lesbians. They don't always love
thespians?
Us. Lesbians. Okay. They don't always love us, though. I'm not. These are all generalizations, and those are horrible. But for the sake of this podcast, let's do it. It's you've got militant lesbians, you've got the feminist lesbians, and all of them, all the people that are really into woman power and women are awesome, hate female to male trans people because, well, why would you leave womanhood? Women are awesome. And they hate male to female trans because you're not a real woman. You suck. You're fake. You're get the hell out. So yeah, there's some issues, but I mean, good people are good people and they're open, and that's what there is. Then there's those people that have a label and take it to the extreme and just be douchebags, and well, there's always going to be problems with them.
When you begin this process, where do you dive in? I mean, have you always gone to various sites, I don't know if they're social networks? I mean, tell us a little bit about the community, and where does the trans community meet? Where do you guys talk? Guys and gals talk?
In Indiana, it's pathetically horrible here. It's getting better. But for most people, it's just online. You search things. There's forums. There's communities. There's groups. Social networking, not really, because there's a lot of what they call them, I guess, is another offensive term, but like tranny chasers. There's a lot of people that are really interested in experimenting with it because they think, hey, I might want to be kind of gay or have a gay experience, but I'd rather do it with somebody that looks like a woman or whatever. So you got to be careful. There's a lot of porn-driven trans stuff online, and it's kind of disgusting. So you got to be really careful. And then, like, once you put yourself out there as trans and you have a picture or something where you don't look like horrible, you get a whole bunch of old, weird people following you or messaging you and offering you money or something for favors. So it's difficult, but there is a lot of really good information out there. There's people that have been out there, since the dawn of the internet, been putting websites up about trans issues and this and that, and helping people understand. And then, it's all basically community driven. The knowledge and the understanding and everything else is community driven. There's law centers and different organizations, and those have all been created and started in the community. So there's a lot of resources, but it's iffy. The best thing to do is try to meet with people local. Like, I just now started, I think, like the first LGBTQ meetup group for at least Greenwood I think there's ever been.
So it's going to be crowded, I bet.
No. It's going to be me waiting around for the first like 3 or 4 meetings until someone shows up, or I find somebody and I yell at them and tell them to come. So but you got to think the trans community is we're very shy. I mean, a lot of us, until we're pretty far along in transition, don't really want to go out and go, hey, look at me, I'm halfway in between where I want to be, and I look weird, and I'm not comfortable, and I'm shy.
How long before you hit the bitch, I'm fabulous phase?
Oh, bitch, I am fabulous.
So what are some of the best resources out there? Where are the places that you trust? I mean, in the libertarian community, there's Cato and Reason, and We Are Libertarians, and wonderful sites like those. What about the trans community? What are some of the big sites that really are useful and helpful for not just people who are thinking or are in transition, but also for people who are curious about learning about the trans community?
I don't know. I hit a lot of different things for different reasons. So I wouldn't say there's any one big encompassing website. Blogs are huge. You basically you search for blogs and based off certain topics and you bounce around because, like I said, it's there's not one community. I mean, you go to one website that has a lot of really good information about treatments or, hair removal, but it's a large cross-dressing website, so it's got a lot of weird stuff on it, at least weird to me anyways. Not saying those people are weird, but it's weird to me. So it's not necessarily a great overall resource. It's a very, fractured community, but you'll always find what you want. You just might have to look around and hop around a little bit.
I would like to see the website that you consider too weird and freaky. This is a person who, before last week's episode, texted goatsy to somebody, and if you don't know what that is, look that up. Google that.
Spell it. You got to spell it. Goat.se.
Okay. Good luck. Godspeed. Somewhere deep down in the mind of especially older people, that's one of the fears, that you're just some sort of weird, sicko, sex pervert pedophile.
Oh, of course it would be in the back of their mind, and a lot of people would think that, because that's a lot of the anti-trans or even anti-gay stuff way back when they use is that they are all pedophiles, and they've done studies and this and that, and then that's kind of dumped onto the trans community because, first off, we're weird, but second off, most people assume that we're gay, and that's rarely the case, depending, but that gets very tricky, but we're not always just...
Well, let's not hear that story just now.
No, we don't want that. That's a whole nother episode, but it does get thrown on us, and so we're looked at as just absolute abominations against everything natural, and that we're disgusting. And the whole pedophile thing, not so much, but then you get into the community, and the little bit people might know about is like the adult baby stuff. And so that has a gender bending aspect in it. So people assume that other people are like that, and it's ignorance. But yeah, no, it's definitely prevalent to a degree with the trans community. The whole, you are a sexual deviant, evil person, and you're only doing this because it gets your rocks off.
I don't think you're a deviant.
Oh, good Lord! Remember the conversation we had on the way back from Las Vegas?
Oh yeah, that's right. You are a deviant. I forgot. Well, not to speak, this is obviously not a podcast about the entire experience of a transition. It's one person's individual opinions and stories, and it's not reflective of the entire community. Go ahead and tell us, what if you were representing the entire trans community, though, what would you like to say to society at large?
Wow, that's you just dropped that question on me like I had no preparation whatsoever. If I was to represent the entire trans community and speaking on behalf of it to the general public,
give us the tranny State of the Union.
You can make a blanket statement, and
that's what I'm asking you to do.
I'm getting there. Son of a bitch. We're people too. We're no different than you or anybody else. I hate to use that phrase, but we're born this way. This is our natural state. So you can question us about it, but don't question our existence. Don't question our, how legitimate we are. Don't label us. Don't put us in special groups. We don't want special laws, special status. We don't want anything special from anybody. We just want to be treated as we appear, as we ask to be treated, with respect, just like any other human being. We don't want to have to relive a multitude of different civil rights movements all at once just because you can't apply it to maybe a different color or a different gender or a different person. So just treat everybody with respect and basically leave us alone. We just want to live our lives how we want to live our lives, and that's really anybody can ask for. So what you expect out of life is the same as what we expect. So, thank you. May Cthulhu bless the United States.
Thank you for joining us here on Creating Miah. We appreciate it, and we will see you again next week.